All right, everybody. Hello and welcome to the show. Today is Sunday, March 31st, 2024. I'm your host, Permission to Exist, also known as PTE. It's so good to see you all here this evening. Happy Easter to those of you who celebrate Easter. I hope you had a great Easter Sunday with your family or with yourself, however you choose to spend your holidays. But welcome to the show. Good to have you. I'm back. See, I disappear for a little while and then I come back. I come back. Thank you to everyone who supports the channel in any meaningful way, be that Cash App, Patreon, super chatting, liking, commenting, and subscribing. Shout out to my channel members. And I also wanted to remind you guys, some of you already know, but I do have an email mailing list that will notify you anytime I go live. And that's the only time I email you. I don't spam. I don't do anything like that. So you guys don't have to worry about me doing that. But the link to that mailing list is in the description box, and it is very easy to manage your preferences there. Preferences. What a great segue into tonight's show. So, a little bit of what sparked this. And hey to everybody in the chat, welcome. Good to see you guys. Some of you got a reply from me today. I started knocking down this inbox. I have 3,000 emails to get through. So some of you should have gotten a reply from me today. And you can look for that reply. It might come months later, it might come a few years later, but I'm going to reply to you all. Welcome, everyone. So today's show, since we were just talking about preferences, you know, I'm worried for humanity a little bit, but I think you guys know that by now. I've been worried for a while. And when I come across posts like these, it makes me worry even more because it tells me we are drifting further and further away from reality, number one, and from humanity, number two. And you could put those in any order: humanity first, then reality, or reality first and then humanity. But when I come across posts like these, it lets me know that we're drifting. And so I want to make sure that anytime I see stuff like this, I bring it out to you. And I want to make clear now, and I'll make clear a little bit later on in the show, that I'm actually not attacking the author, the original poster, the person who made this post. I have nothing against her. I think she's doing good work. I think her work is more important than even she realizes. So I want y'all to know that. But the point I'm going to make is gradually going to come out during the show. So I want y'all to know I have nothing against this woman. I think she's doing a good thing. But the overall takeaway, and we're going to dive deep into this, is that we should not have to have a diagnosis of any kind to receive good treatment or to receive fair or respectful treatment. You shouldn't need a diagnosis from a doctor to get that. And that's kind of the takeaway I got from the post that I'm going to share with you was, wow, so otherwise the companies that she's marketing this message to would not do these things unless this person has some sort of diagnosis. In this particular case, the diagnosis is neurodivergence. And that could mean a number of things. That could mean autistic, that could mean gifted, ADHD, ADD, anything that is deemed divergent from a quote unquote normal mind is the diagnosis that I'm talking about for this show. And again, while I think it's great that we're going to see people finally starting to consider people and their comfort and preferences at work, I think what's more important and the bigger takeaway from what I'm going to share with you is the fact that A, it needs to be said in the first place, and B, it's advocacy for something that should be granted to anyone. You shouldn't necessarily need a diagnosis to be able to advocate for these things. And you guys are going to see what I mean in a second. And it begs the question for me, how did we arrive at a place in society where we have to advocate so strongly for our individual needs and preferences? I don't consider that a good thing. I think it's great that it's being talked about, but the fact that it has to be said at all means that otherwise people aren't getting these things unless they have a diagnosis. Okay. So hopefully that's pretty clear, and hopefully it will become even more clear. Something else I want to address right at the start of the show is that you see the word wrong is in quotation marks. And in no way am I implying that there's something wrong with the person who has been diagnosed neurodivergent. That's why the quotation marks are there. The quotation marks are meant to imply that the word wrong is not really being used in its actual sense. Hopefully, guys know that, but you never know. Without fail, it's usually one or two people who misconstrue my entire message. So I like to get these things out right at the start of the show. So, with no further ado, let's take a look at the actual post. We're going to go through it in its entirety. As usual, I'm tickled. What else is new? But we're going to go through this, okay? So, the post author, her name is Jess Meredith, okay? And her tagline is neurodiversity training that's fun, engaging, and impactful. Keynote speaker, making environments and individuals neuro inclusive. Beautiful. I think that's a great thing. Nothing wrong with it. And I actually have no issues with her or what she's doing or the post itself. It's kind of the subtext that people may or may not realize is there. So she broke it up into a couple different categories. And the title of her post is Here are 22 questions you can ask new team members to promote neuro inclusion and generally be a good manager. She breaks it up into categories: communication preferences, meetings, work environment, task environment, collaboration and relationships, feedback and recognition, professional development, and well being. Okay. So let's go through these and then we're going to talk about it. Okay. So again, 22 questions you can ask new team members to promote neuro inclusion. Communication preferences. How do you prefer to receive instructions? How do you prefer to receive feedback? For example, written, verbal, one-on-one, in a group setting, etc. How do you like to be contacted? Is there anything specific I should bear in mind? So, for example, is it okay if I call you unexpectedly? Would you prefer to avoid instant messaging? So forth and so on. Meetings. Do you prefer virtual or in person meetings? Do you prefer to have your camera on or off during virtual meetings? And what's your preferences for others on the call? Do you prefer to add your contributions to meetings verbally, in online meetings, or via online messages? Do you prefer face-to-face or virtual one-to-ones? Would walking meetings be useful for you? Work environment. Is there anything about your workspace that helps you focus or makes it challenging for you to work effectively? Do you have any sensory sensitivities we should be aware of? For example, noise, lighting, temperature. Task management. What strategies or tools do you find most helpful for organizing and prioritizing your work? Is there anything I could do to enhance your productivity and support your task management? For example, breaking tasks into chunks, giving one task at a time, allocating time with you for each task, checking in regularly. Collaboration and relationships. Are there ways we can support your collaborative efforts, such as providing additional context or clear guidelines? Are you comfortable with social gatherings? If not, is there anything I can do to support you? How do you prefer to build working relationships? Feedback and recognition. What type of recognition resonates with you? For example, public acknowledgement, private feedback, tangible rewards. How do you prefer to receive constructive feedback to ensure it's helpful and motivating? Professional development. Are there specific learning or training formats that suit your learning style best? How can we support your professional growth and development effectively? Well-being. What self-care practices contribute to your well-being, and how can we help facilitate them? Are there any specific stressors we should be mindful of to support your overall health? In general, is there anything I can do to support you to thrive here? And then she closes it out with Promoting neuro inclusivity is a journey that starts with open and respectful conversations. Can you meet all of an individual's needs and preferences all the time? No. But can you create a safe culture where people know they are respected, valued, and accommodated where possible? Yes, absolutely. Here's to creating workplaces that work for everyone, okay? So that's the post. I have linked it in the description box if you want to go check it out yourself. So now let's talk about this, okay? I'm trying to decide. I think, let me share my thoughts and then we'll kind of go through a few of them one by one. Okay? My first thought is, and again, this is not directed to Jess Meredith. This is directed in general. This is a general question. My first thought is, awesome. And when I give you the answers to these questions, are you actually going to be okay with my answer? Are you going to be all right with the responses to some of these questions? Because it has been proven over the past couple of years, really, that the answers to these questions y'all don't like. You don't want to hear the actual answer because when I give it to you, you're going to be upset. And this is coming from someone who has not been diagnosed as neurodivergent in any way. So that's kind of the whole point of the entire show. So if I were diagnosed neurodivergent, would you then hear me out? Would you then consider what I'm saying to you worthy of consideration? Would you consider it worthy of respect? Would you pay it any mind if I were diagnosed neurodivergent? It is one big question. It's kind of an open question. I don't have an answer for that. I have a hunch as far as to what most employers' answers would be, but it's an open question. And then my second follow-up thought to that is, not being diagnosed neurodivergent, does that throw all of these things out the window? Well, PTE, you're not different in that way. You're normal, quote unquote. So no, we're not going to consider any of these things for you. Do you guys see what I'm saying? This is kind of me speaking on the current state of employment in this country, probably in the world, but I can really only speak from the American point of view. I think it's beautiful that people are actually out here talking about these things. But kind of a third thought that I had was, well, gosh, this would be great for anybody. This would be amazing for any employee, neurodivergent or not. What a great approach to modern day employment, where we are taking people into consideration and thinking through the different things that they might need to feel happy and thriving in a workplace, especially a workplace where you're going to force us to show up in person. So that would be, let's go through these, okay? And I'm just going to kind of give my reaction to the question, my thoughts, and we're just going to go through one by one, and then I'll share more thoughts, okay? Welcome everyone to the show. So let's just start at the top. Communication preferences. How do you prefer to receive instructions? Hey, great question. For example, me personally, I like things written down. I really do. As much as possible, I prefer for things to be written because number one, it helps me remember what was said. But number two, it helps me like sort and organize things. So if I have to think back on something that happened or was supposed to happen or something we're doing, I can literally just go pull it up in order, in the order that it occurred, and read like, okay, yeah, in January she said this, then in February this, then oh, okay, it's like a timeline I can keep. So I prefer them written. Perfect. Do you give written instructions? Probably not, because I have discovered a lot of workplaces, y'all, people do not read anymore. It's not that they can't read, which is a whole different conversation by itself. People do not read anymore. They don't read. They literally just don't do it. They'll read like the first couple of sentences and that's it. And this is proven to me when I'll write an email that's not even that long, maybe a paragraph. And if I ask a question at the end of the paragraph, when they reply, they have not answered the question, which tells me you never got there. You never got there, you know? So it's like if I had the kind of free time and power and money, I would put like in the last sentence, if you read this sentence, send me your Cash App and I'll send you $100 just to see how many people actually make it to the last sentence of the email. I guarantee you I would still have my money at the end of the day. Anyway, how do you prefer to receive feedback? That's actually pretty standard. Do you like it written, verbal, one on one, group setting? I don't have many comments there. How do you like to be contacted? Is there anything specific I should bear in mind? For example, is it okay if I call you unexpectedly? Would you prefer to avoid instant messaging? Right? I think that's a good question. But the question is, will it be respected in the workplace? Because if I tell you, hey, I actually really don't mind an email, it helps me stay organized. Are you going to actually write me the email, or are you just going to pick up the phone and call or do a video call or instant message me? Like, are you? I think maybe that's what's missing from this article. It's like, hey, and also maybe respect the preferences that they tell you, right? Hey, email me. It helps me stay organized with everything going on. You say okay, but then you never ever send the email. You see what I'm saying? So nothing really big there, nothing major there. The major stuff comes later. Here we go. Do you prefer virtual or in-person meetings? I like this question. Actually recently met a girl. She's not a girl, she's grown, but it's just a dialect thing. If you're female, we call you a girl. If you're male, we call you a boy. It's just how it is, no matter how old you are. Recently met this woman who actually she gave up a remote job because she wanted to be around people again. And I said, wow. I said, girl, I could pick your brain for days on the why behind that. But I'm guessing maybe she just felt lonely at home. Maybe she just wanted human interaction again. She probably has her reasons, no judgment. But I mean, I think that's a great question. Do you prefer virtual or in-person meetings? Good question. Are you going to respect it though? If I tell you, actually, I like all my meetings virtual, is that something you're going to respect? But now we're getting into the hot button issues that you guys know I feel so strongly about. Do you prefer to have your camera on or off during virtual meetings? And what are your preferences for others on the call? And my answer to that question, if someone asked me that question, honestly, I would say, honestly, I prefer to have my camera off always. Always. I could see it if the job was 100% remote, meaning we don't even have an office to go to. Fine, I'll let you see me once a month. But once you got a good feeling for my face and what it looks like, I would actually prefer to have my camera off at all times. And I don't care what y'all do. You can turn your cameras on, off. I really don't care what you do. But, you know, as far as I'm concerned, I'd prefer to have it off. Is that something you're going to respect, or do I have to get a diagnosis first? That is my question. That is the point of this whole live stream. Do I have to obtain a diagnosis of being neurodivergent in some way in order to express my preference of having the camera off? Do you see what I'm saying? Or, for example, let's just flip it and let's say I was someone who needed to read lips in order to fully hear what you were saying, because some people are like that. Some people have different struggles with their hearing and their ability to hear. So they read lips because it helps them understand what the person is saying. Perfect. Like, oh, okay, you need to be able to see people's faces and their lips so you can actually hear what they're saying or understand. Got it. Boom. It works both ways. You see what I'm saying? But once again, do I have to obtain a diagnosis in order for me to tell you I don't want to have the camera on? It makes me uncomfortable. It makes me feel weird. It makes me feel like I have to dress up, which I do. I hate it. I work from home on Fridays. I hate when I have a meeting on Fridays because I always have to do my makeup. And sometimes it's just that one meeting, but I feel compelled to do my makeup. Otherwise, in my opinion, I feel like I look tired, and I probably am tired. But I don't want to broadcast that. You know what I'm saying? Like, just let me look tired, because right now, what's really needed right now? I'm not a puppeteer, so I'm not putting on a puppet show. So what do you need to actually see? Unless you're someone who struggles with hearing, which I totally respect. But what is it that you need to see? What you really need from me right now are my ears, my sense of hearing, my brain and my ability to process, and my voice and my ability to respond to you. That's what you actually need. So, unless I'm putting on a puppet show, or unless I'm demonstrating something to you that you need to actually see in order to understand, why do I need to be on this camera? Why? Or I or would the diagnosis finally allow you to enable that? And furthermore, why is that an abnormal thing? Because what you're basically saying is, oh, something's wrong with her and she needs this thing a certain way because she's not normal like us. Normal people like to look at other people in these weird ass cameras for hours at a time. And that's normal, but she's abnormal. So we have to make this exception for her because she's diagnosed abnormal. Do you see what I'm saying? Who's to say that having it on is normal? The chat says, I let them see me tired because they need to know the workload is exhausting. I know that's right. I know that's right. Like, oh, do I have to get a diagnosis in order for you to tell me to turn this camera off? And if the answer is yes, well, maybe I'll look into that because it's that worth it to me. But I don't want to abuse the system for people who actually are neurodivergent and need their diagnoses because they actually have a condition. But we shouldn't have to need one for you to respect that, is what I'm saying. You want to know what I noticed? This is an aside, but I noticed that the men that I work with have no problem turning their camera off, honey. No problem. They'll either never turn it on from the very beginning, or they'll have it on and then they'll just turn it off, and they offer no explanation to anybody. They don't feel compelled to be like, hey, sorry guys, my camera's being weird today. Or hey, sorry guys, my camera's not working today. They offer no excuses, no explanation. If they don't feel like being on there, they're not. And no one says anything to them. But when women do it, at least where I work, there's always some conversation that has to happen later. Hey, I noticed you haven't really been on camera lately. Yeah, I didn't want to be. Just like Bob over here. Bob didn't want to be on the camera either. He wasn't. You see what I'm saying? Like it, and I guess what I'm saying is I'm not knocking the men. I think I admire their courage and their ballsiness, which is like, no, I don't feel like turning it on, so I'm not. And they just don't. I have a family member. I was talking to him one day, and he was telling me about a job he was interviewing for, and somehow the topic came up, and he said, "Oh, listen, I tell them from day one, I don't, I don't do all that camera shit." And I was like, "You tell them that in the interview?" He's like, "Yeah, they need to know from day one, I don't do all that camera shit." And I was like, "And you still get the job?" He's like, "Yeah." He's like, "Why wouldn't I?" Isn't that something? Absolutely. Chat says there's definitely a double standard. Like he was surprised at my surprise. He was like, "Yeah, I still get the job. Why wouldn't I? For what reason would I not get it? Because I'm telling you, I don't do I don't do all that camera shit." I want to try that one day when I'm in a position where I have FU money and I'm interviewing or something, and they're like, "Is there any? Do you have any questions for us?" I'll say, "Yeah, would you all consider yourselves camera heavy or camera agnostic?" I say, "Oh, we believe in cameras because we believe in that connection that you're just losing when you don't see people face to face, and when you can't just walk over to their cubicle and ask them a question, or bump into them at the coffee maker and bring up the next great idea." So, we like to see cameras on because it just helps us feel connected. It makes us feel more like a family. And, also, if I can't see your face, then I don't really know, like, if you're processing the information or if I'm making sense, or, you might look confused. And if I can't see you, then I won't be able to see your confusion. Don't get me started, y'all. Listen, we've been down this road. For those of you who might be new to the channel, we did a whole series called Corporate Cults. There's a whole series, and there might even be a marathon video somewhere in here where I just strung them all together and played it as a marathon. That might exist somewhere. Maybe. I'm not sure if it does, though. But we've been down this road. It's a trigger for me, but I think it's important for me to discuss, even though I'm triggered, okay? So, do I need a diagnosis, yes or no, to turn my camera off? Do you prefer to add your contributions to meetings verbally in online meetings, or via online messages? I mean, that's fine. That's fine, whatever. I have nothing to say about that. Do you prefer face-to-face or virtual one-on-ones? Kind of a similar question to earlier, so I don't really have anything to add there. Would walking meetings be useful for you? Girl, no, girl. No, I'm just kidding. I mean, sure, whatever. If that floats your boat, that's fine. No real triggers there. Now let's get on to it. Let's get on to a trigger. Work environment. Is there anything about your workspace that helps you focus or makes it challenging for you to work effectively? Yes. Actually, yes. The workspace itself makes it challenging for me to work effectively. Well, PTE, whatever do you mean? Well, the open nature of it is pretty noisy. My coworker won't turn off her notifications. So every time she gets an email, I think I get an email, but I'm not. It's just that the sound is set in Microsoft. And so everyone's email notification sounds the same. Same for instant messages. My coworker leaves hers on loud. So every time she gets a Teams message, I think I'm getting a Teams message, except I'm not. So I'm filtering that out. I'm listening to one of my other coworkers hack his lungs out of his body. I think he's really sick and probably should go to a hospital and might be contagious, but whatever, neither here nor there. It's a little stank in here, but I'm not going to complain. I will just try to ignore the variety of smells. And it's freezing also, and we're not allowed to have space heaters, and that's fine. And also these flickering fluorescent lights are not pleasant. I don't like them. So you see how the workspace itself is making it challenging for me to work effectively. But if I don't have a diagnosis of neurodivergence, then will my concerns go unheard? Because in your mind, well, you're normal, and a normal person should be able to deal with that. So the fact that you can't must mean you're different, because you can't turn off all of your human what's it called, senses: sight, sound, touch, taste, smell, because you can't ignore those and focus on the computer screen in front of you. Something must be wrong with you. Something must be wrong with you. Do you have a diagnosis? You don't? Okay, so then you're just a bitch then. You're just bitching. I'm like, no, I don't think this is bitching. You asked, first of all. But second of all, no, I ain't just bitching. These are real things. Like, and then you find yourself having to explain the basics. Like, for example, like sound. I know there are some people who can tune out sounds. Like, some people can tune out the sound of their smoke detector going off, excuse me, every 2 or 3 minutes. They've learned to ignore it. And I would make the argument that that's actually neurodivergent. I think that that's the unusual thing, not the normal thing. I don't think it's normal to be able to ignore stimuli. I know the brain tunes out stimuli to some degree, otherwise you go completely insane. But to be able to hear an annoying sound that is actually designed to be annoying, because it wants you to do something. It wants you to change its battery so it works. So they design it to be annoying. And the fact that you're able to tune that out for months, weeks, and years at a time, you're neurodivergent, not me. But because I can't ignore my coworker's phone call that's on 10 in the corner, this coworker whose notifications are going off every 6 minutes, this coworker who's hacking up a lung and a kidney, you know, and all the other little sounds going on around because I'm having trouble tuning that out. I'm the neurodivergent one. You see what I'm saying? I hope this is making sense. Okay. And then, do you have any sensory sensitivities we should be aware of? For example, noise, lighting, and temperature. Yes, all three. All three. um, but does that make me neurodivergent or does that make me a living human being? Because if you can't hear noise and you can't see light and you don't feel temperature, are you alive? Are you even alive? Are you? It's a question. You don't sense temperature changes. Lighting doesn't bother you, too bright, too dim, too dark. Nothing bothers you, and noises don't phase you either. Are you alive, or are you severely traumatized? And I'm not making light of that. I know people who have gone through like crazy bad trauma often can tune out everything. Like they can be in a room and all this activity is going on and they're not registering any of it. But the point is, so why don't they bother you? Chat says everything you mentioned are issues for me in the workplace, PTE. I'm telling you, it's hard. Like what nobody tells you when you're in school is that it's not necessarily the work you're going to be doing. For some of you, it is. Some of you have very complicated jobs. It's the endurance that makes work hard. It's what you have to endure and tolerate day in and day out, things that you would change in your own environment. If it's too noisy in your house, maybe you'll move to a more quiet room or a quiet place. If you don't like the lighting, you either turn them off, on, or you go sit outside in the sunshine or not. You might actually close the blinds because maybe you don't like your house to be too bright, which is fine. Temperature, if you're home, you're going to do something about the temperature. If you're hot, you're going to make it colder. If you're cold, you're going to make it warmer. And you're a happier person for that, aren't you? Doesn't that make you more content, like instantly? Like I'm a little bit cold right now. I'm looking around to see where my blanket is because I'm thinking about draping my shoulders because I'm chilly. But if I'm at work, all I have is the little sweater that I brought with me and hoping for the best. So I say that to say, does that make you neurodivergent? Because sometimes you feel cold, because sometimes it's too bright or too dark or too noisy? Chat says the coffers. These coffers, man, listen. We've been down this road too. And all I'm going to say is I think people don't realize how much other people don't really like that. It's not like when something gets caught in your throat and you're trying to clear your throat so you don't choke. It's y'all know what type of coughing I'm talking about. I don't need to describe it. But for me, the one that gets to me the most is the one where I know someone is getting sick. And the reason I know they're getting sick is because I'm around you so much that I know what your baseline is. And your baseline is not coughing. But then it'll start with a little cough, and then it'll kind of progress. Then it'll progress. Then here comes a sneeze, and then it'll progress and progress. I'm like, oh God, they're getting sick. Oh no. And I've been largely cured of my germophobia. For me, it's now we're on principle because it's like, wow, all you might have is a cold, just a standard cold. I don't want your cold. Like I don't want it. I don't want a cold. I'd rather not. I'd actually rather not have a respiratory illness right now. But you are making it to where I may not have a choice but to have one. And that's not fair because we're actually not family. You're not my spouse. You're not my sibling, my parents, or my child. If my child comes home with a cold, well, chances are the whole family is going to have a cold. And that just is the way that it is because we live in the same house. We touch the same things. We sleep in the same rooms. We eat from the same dinner table. So if we end up contracting an illness from that communal, voluntary environment, so be it. Work is largely involuntary. And I know that some people would argue, well, PTE, you can quit anytime, but no one has time to be quitting a job just so you don't catch a cold. So we are involuntarily in here largely because you all don't respect this top line. Is there anything about your workspace that helps you focus or makes it challenging? Yeah, the workspace itself. The workspace itself. I think employees, this is another aside. I think employees would be happier with the whole back to work mandate or back to the office mandate if you just gave people offices. And they don't have to be elaborate. They have to be big enough for a desk, maybe 2 or 3 chairs, like a bookshelf or a cabinet or something. And for a lot of people, that would be fine with them as long as they can close the door. I think they would be all right with that. I think we would actually cut down on a lot of the issues we have in the workplace because they'd be able to close their door and the walls go all the way to the ceiling. None of that cut off at the top foolishness. All the way to the ceiling. Okay? Chat says the crunchy coughs. Yes, the crunchy coughs. You know what I'm talking about. So anyway, I think a lot of people would be all right with that. They'd be like, you know what? Yeah, my commute sucks, but at least I have an office and I can close the door. And for example, people who love air fresheners, plug-in air fresheners. I can't stand them personally. I hate them. I don't think we're supposed to be breathing them. That's a whole nother conversation. But you might love them. Great. Plug it up in your office and close the door. And then you can sit in there and literally inhale those chemicals all day. If you want to, that's your business. But it won't affect your peers. You see what I'm saying? Excuse me. Anyway, now I'm rambling. This is one of my hot button issues for those of you who might be new. Very passionate about work, working, the workplace, all of that. Kind of sort of have a whole another channel devoted to it called Pettynomics. Haven't posted on there probably in over a year. But yeah, I'm very passionate about this. So let's continue. So we covered sensory sensitivities. All right. Task management. What strategies or tools do you find most helpful for organizing and prioritizing your work? That's a fair question. I think that's fine. I don't think that's necessarily a neurodivergent question. Like so many of these are just human questions. Hey, what strategies or tools do you find helpful for organizing and prioritizing your work? And my follow-up question to that would be like, well, I do have one, but it costs money. Are you going to buy it? You see what I'm saying? Like, don't ask questions you don't want the answer to. Is there anything I could do to enhance your productivity and support your task management? Like breaking tasks into chunks, giving one at a time, allocating time with you for each one, checking in regularly. I mean, I think that's a fair question. Like, my answer to that question would be, yeah, actually tell me what you need, tell me when you need it by, and then for the most part, like kind of sort of leave me alone a little bit. Like, I don't want to be rude in saying that, but like kind of tell me what you need, when you need it by, and then kind of like back off a little bit. But there is no polite, corporate friendly way to say that. Anyway, I think that's a fair question. Again, a lot of these are just fair questions for anybody. Collaboration and work relationships. Are there ways we can support your collaborative efforts, such as providing additional context or clear guidelines? I mean, yes, please. Like, could you please give me context, like, and clear guidelines? Like, and I guess I'm confused by some of these questions. Like, why wouldn't Why wouldn't you give context and why wouldn't you give clear guidelines? Like, yes, I would like those things. And I don't think a person should have to be neurodivergent to request that. Do you see what I'm saying? Because keep in mind, the title of this article is 22 questions you can ask your newly neurodivergent employee or something like that. Like, why do I have to have a diagnosis for you to give me clear guidelines? And why is that viewed as an abnormal thing? Do you see what I mean? Like, it almost, I guess what I'm trying to say is, if I were diagnosed neurodivergent, then maybe I could solicit good treatment at the workplace, because it appears that that's the only thing they'll respond to. If you don't have a diagnosis, they're going to treat you like garbage. But if you have a diagnosis, then it's like, oh, she's special. There's something different with her. She's a little different. So make sure you give her context to what we're asking her to do, and also give her clear guidelines. Yeah, because she's special. Yeah, nobody else needs context. Yeah, everyone else can accept messy, muddy, muddled guidelines, guidelines with gray areas. Everyone else can accept that, but you got to be clear with her because she's a little special. Do you see what I'm saying? Let's move on to the next question. Are you comfortable with social gatherings? And if not, is there anything I can do to support you? So, once again, the question becomes, are you comfortable with my answer? Because my answer, and this is just me personally, is sometimes yes. Are you comfortable with social gatherings? Sure, sometimes, yes. Sometimes I would love to come, and other times I don't want to go. Is that okay? And is that going to get me pulled to the side and having a conversation about team spirit and team player? If I tell you, sure, I'll come to some social gatherings, but I would prefer to not be obligated to attend every single one because, quite frankly, I would like to go home. Remember that question about the work environment? Right. Quite frankly, at the end of a long day, I would actually like to go home. Is that okay? Will I be looked down upon for that? Will I be frowned upon for that? Or do I need a diagnosis? And then if I get the diagnosis, then will you leave me alone? Chat says, no, I will not be there. I mean, I don't think it's crazy to work from 8 to 5 or 9 to 5 and then actually not feel like going out again from 6 to 8 or 9 o'clock at night, and probably going to have some wine or something. So now that's going to mess with my sleep and the following day and everything. And I've been in the same clothes all day. And that's just something, that's a whole nother level y'all are just not ready for. I remember at the job I'm currently on right now, they were having an event after work. It started at 6 and we get off at 5. So I told my boss at the time, I was like, hey, I might be a little late because I'm going to change clothes and I just want to freshen up a little bit. And she looked at me like, why? I'm like, girl, what you mean, why? I've been in the same clothes all day. My house is damn near an hour away from here. So I can't run home and then run back. So I just brought some extra clothes with me so I could just change and feel fresh and feel good. And you know what I mean? For another extra 3 hours of being out. What do you mean? Why? I didn't say all this. I'm thinking, woman to woman, what you mean? Why? Are you kidding me? That's why I said, y'all not ready. Y'all aren't ready. Like, y'all aren't ready. Y'all aren't ready for the real heavy hitting conversations. You're not. You're not. Because I shouldn't have to explain to you why. I shouldn't have to explain at all. If I just said, hey, I'm going to be a little late, that should have been that. But why? Why? Really? So, anywho, are you comfortable with social gatherings? If not, is there anything I can do to support you? Yes, you can support me by not pulling me to the side, talking about team player when I decline a social event that I don't want to go to. Or you could support me by let's do social gatherings I actually would want to go to. You see what I'm saying? Everybody don't like to go stand around a bar, y'all. I'm sorry. Like, yes, there are some very nice bars, classy, upscale, but that's generally not what corporate is going for. Corporate is usually going for like the Mexican restaurants bar, which again, nothing against that. They're a lot of fun. And if you go with the right people, you can have a lot of fun. The food's good. I'm not knocking the restaurant itself. I'm just saying, like, if we do this, can we like go to the hotel bar? You know what I'm saying? You know, and on that thread, hold on. Along that thread, I think a lot of times companies forget that everybody in the company is not married or necessarily in a relationship. So the last thing your single employees want to do is go hang out with a bunch of their married coworkers because y'all not flirting. You're not. You're not flirting. You're not really open because you're already taken. So we're going to these social outings and it's kind of awkward because it's like, well, I can't go flirt with these strangers over here because I'm supposed to be here with y'all, but all y'all are married. Y'all aren't flirting. You're not dressed for the occasion. You're not dressed for success because you already have your success. Not Chi Chi's. Chat says Chi Chi's restaurant. Listen. Oh, listen. Chat says the stuffy workplace. Everyone's perfume, cologne, hairspray, body lotion, funky basement clothes, cat and dog smell mixed in with the faulty HVAC system. Speak on it. It's so stank. Listen, I leave pretty much every day for lunch, even if I don't go get any food. And the main reason is because I have to get outside and breathe fresh air. I have to. Like, it is a combination of so many different things. They use these really strong air fresheners in our bathroom. I hate them. I hate going to the bathroom at work because I know I have to smell these strong air fresheners that they use in there. So there's air fresheners. We have like a little cafeteria at my office. So they're cooking lunch for the day or breakfast or whatever. That's filling the whole entire building. Then it's dusty as hell in there, but we're not going to get on that. It's extremely dusty. The floors haven't been vacuumed in forever, and I can tell. But then you mix that in with the body lotion, the perfumes, hairspray, the colognes, the funky basement clothes. Oh my God. It's like, I apologize to my sinuses every day. I'm like, I'm so sorry, y'all. I'm sorry to put you through this. I have to do this for money. I'm sorry. And one day, my hope is that we can breathe fresh air all day long. Okay. Like, it is truly overload. And then one day, a coworker brought in something that had a whole bunch of peppers in it. And it for me, it was almost like the equivalent of pepper spray. I've never been pepper sprayed, thank goodness, but it is what I imagine being pepper sprayed would be like because my eyes started burning, my nose got clogged, my face started to feel like puffy. I was like, "Oh my God, I'm actually having a reaction to all these peppers." Unbelievable. And it wasn't really their fault because they were actually in like a designated eating area. It's not like they were eating at their desk, but it didn't matter because the food was so strong and peppery, it filled the whole building. And I'm like, why did they design buildings where you cannot open the windows? Why? Like, I need a construction analyst or an engineer or someone to explain that to me. Why they designed all these high-rise buildings with windows that can't open. Like, I get the safety issue. You don't want people tumbling out of the window, but you could make the window open like in a different direction, like to where you can't walk out of it, basically. But no air circulation throughout the whole day. That is torture. That is torture. It's torture. Like it is torturous for me. I feel like I spend most of my weekends just clearing out my sinuses. And if I knew how to use a neti pot, I would. I've tried one time and I think I did it really wrong. Like I don't think I did it right. I don't. But if I knew how to use a neti pot correctly, I would use a neti pot every day. Every day. Because the concept makes sense to me. Like you literally rinse your sinuses out. But I didn't do it right, y'all. Something went very, very wrong. Right. Chat says September 11th situation type windows. Exactly. Because they jumped out of the window. Some people did, right? Honey, they've made all these new high rises completely sealed. And it sucks because the air has nowhere to go. It don't get me started, y'all. Oh, I feel myself getting triggered. Maybe I need to get a diagnosis. Okay. Anyway, moving on. How do you prefer to build working relationships? I mean, that's fine. Fair question. Whatever. Like the relationships are going to build themselves. How do I prefer to build working relationships? By not forcing them. Can we please not force them? And again, you see, all my answers to these questions would probably result in an employer or potential employer being like, well, PTE, you seem like a great candidate, really smart. We'd love to have you on the team, but we just can't do that. We turn our camera on. We believe in team building activities. You see what I'm saying? Like they would push back with everything that they're not going to do for you. And it appears that the only way they'd even consider it is if you have a diagnosis, which that should not be the case. All right. Professional development, specific learning or training formats that suit your learning style the best. I think that's fine. I think it's a good question. How can we support your professional growth and development effectively? I mean, that should be just a general question for everybody. Well being. What self care practices contribute to your well being and how can we help facilitate them? Let me work from home. That's my self-care practice. Allowing me to work from home as often as possible and as much as possible. That's what contributes to my self-care. And you can facilitate that by saying yes. Are there any specific stressors we should be mindful of to support your overall health? Yes, see above. In general, is there anything I can do to support you to thrive here? And I've pretty much already answered all those questions. Promoting neuroinclusivity is a journey that starts with open and respectful conversations. Agreed. But truly, promoting inclusivity is a journey that starts with open and respectful conversations. Like these are great questions to be inclusive of literally anyone. You shouldn't need a diagnosis. Can you meet all of an individual's needs and preferences all the time? No, but you can create a safe culture where people know they are respected, valued, and accommodated. Here's to creating workplaces that work for everyone. So I want to speak on this part here. Can you meet all of an individual's needs and preferences all the time? No. Okay, let's talk about that. Because I know there are some people who would be like, okay, PTE, this sounds great. But in reality, there's no employer, unless they're a small employer, that would be able to accommodate all of these different things for potentially their thousands of employees. We got thousands of employees, and it would be really, really hard for us to accommodate every single need for every single employee. That's why we just make rules and make everyone follow them because it's easier. I would say, okay, I have two responses to that. One, this is exactly what they do in school. So when I was a teacher, at least, we had to come up with education strategies for each student. It didn't matter if they had a diagnosis or not. How does this student learn best? What learning strategies can you put in place to address this unique student? And we had to literally reflect that in our lesson plans. Okay. So each student, you had to kind of understand who they were, what made them tick, how they learned best, what their learning style was, and try to make sure your lesson plans accommodated all those different needs. So they're already doing this in school. Why are you suddenly stopping when they hit the workplace? That's my first question. So it's okay to do this in school, but as soon as they hit the workplace, it's like, well, luxury time is over. You either get in line or you get out. It's very militaristic. So they're already doing it in school, is my first response. But here's my second response. The way that you accommodate all of these different needs, and even for large numbers of people, is to let people be adults. And I know that's hard for y'all to do. I know it's hard. I know it's the one thing you don't want to do. But by allowing people to be adults, you're going to solve a lot of this. Meaning, what would an adult do as far as like the camera? An adult would be like, you know what? I look pretty good today. I think I want to come on camera. Or, you know what? I'm not feeling it today. I'm not going to come on camera. It's two things. It's adulthood and accountability. So if I'm the boss, if I'm the leader, and we're having a virtual call, I honestly don't care if your camera is off or on. And I'm going to demonstrate that as a leader by sometimes having my camera on and sometimes having my camera off. That's how I'm going to lead by example. But here's what I'm looking for. Are my employees paying attention? Are they executing on the things that we're discussing? And if I call on them to ask them a question or something, are they right there with an answer, which indicates they're listening? I just can't see them right now, right? And that's how you resolve that. That's the accountability piece. If we're working on something important, I don't care if your camera is off and or on. Are you listening? Are you paying attention? Because that's going to show itself very quickly. If I call your name and it takes you 30 seconds to come on the microphone, I already know you're going to say, sorry, I was muted. That's fine because it happens to all of us. But if over the course of 6 months, every time I call you, you're muted. Or when I call you to ask you a question, call on you to ask you a question, and you're like, I'm sorry, what was what's going on? If that's a continuous pattern with you, what that tells me is not, oh, I need to have them turn their camera on because they're not paying attention. It tells me you're not taking this seriously and you're not paying attention. So that's a different conversation. I don't care about the camera. I don't care if you're on the beach. If you're on the beach, but you're paying attention and contributing to the meeting when I need you to, you're not going to hear anything from me other than, hey, thank you. Thanks for doing a great job for the company. We appreciate you. I don't care if you're in Tibet or Tibet or Thailand. I don't care. Are you paying attention and are you contributing what you're supposed to contribute? Do you hit your deadlines or do you consistently miss your deadlines? Is the work product you're turning in sloppy or is the work product you're turning in high quality? That's all that would matter to me. Because to me, this is the easiest way to weed people out. If you're focused on unimportant things like whether or not they come to the socials and whether or not they turn the camera on, your focus is in the wrong place. And that's why a lot of these companies are going down and falling apart from the inside out because their focus is 100% on the wrong place. 100%. 100%. Like it's like a very weird like a sorority rush or a fraternity rush where they're literally watching you almost 24/7 to make sure that you're like it in line with what the sorority or fraternity expects of you. Who are you hanging out with? What are you wearing? What are you posting on social media? Where's your attitude? Are you enthusiastic or do you act like you don't want to be here? Who are you kissing up to? Are you coming to all the social events that we put on? Like you're focused on all of that, like a sorority that's rushing or like a fraternity that's rushing new members. And that's why your businesses fall apart because that's not what business is about. Business is about the end product at the end of the day. Now, if you have a great culture and a strong, internal environment for your company, then chances are you're going to be putting out a good product, but not necessarily. Because you could have a very strong culture or environment, but if all y'all do is play all day, you're not accomplishing anything, basically. Chat says, exactly. What am I producing and how well do I produce it? Not do I hang out with you on Friday evenings after work? Exactly. Chat says, at the end of the day got to end. Glorilla. Is that one of her quotes? I mean, that's what it boils down to. What are we here for? We're here to make money, honey. And chances are we're trying to make money selling some product or service, period. Are we delivering that product or service or not? Because, see, to me, like, I think about this a lot, y'all, because I'm like, if I ran a company, there are some people who would be like, she's the best boss I've ever had, best company I've ever worked for. And then there are some people who would be like, she's the most strict boss I've ever had, worst company I've ever worked for. Why? Because the strictness comes in the accountability piece. I'm not going to bother you. You don't want to drive into the office? Don't. You don't want to come on camera? Don't. You don't want to come to the after hours events? Don't. Because it's not actually what I hired you for. I hired you to build the app, or I hired you to do payroll, or I hired you to do sales. That's what I hired you for. So if you don't want to do all that other stuff, don't. Please don't. But are you delivering on the thing I asked you to deliver on? That's where the strictness would come in. So the people who truly lack accountability in any real way and wouldn't be able to appreciate like the freedom that I'm counterbalancing with that accountability, they would say it's super, she's strict. She doesn't like typos and emails that go out to the customers. No, I don't, because it makes us look crazy. I don't care if you're on a beach in the Caribbean. That email shouldn't have any typos going out to the customers because it makes us look illiterate. And PTE does not like to look illiterate. It's not fun for her. Okay. You see what I mean? Like, man, she's all hung up on grammar, man. Stupid CEO. Nah, we're on point around here. We're on point, and the trade-off for that is an extensive amount of freedom. Travel the world. Travel the world, but the meeting is at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So figure out what time that is wherever you are and log on unless you have PTO. If you're off, you're off. But if you're not off, you just happen to be traveling the world, well, just make sure you have a good Wi-Fi connection when it's time for our meeting. You see what I'm saying? I mean, I feel like this is not asking a lot. This seems like common sense to me, but apparently it's not. That's why I started the show by saying I feel like we're drifting further and further away from reality and humanity. Like, do you see what I'm saying? Yes, they hire us to be their friend. Okay. So wrapping up the thoughts again, the link to this post is in the description box. Okay. So I think, among other things, and again, not attacking that author, I think she's doing great work. I'm glad that she's starting the conversation and starting to normalize asking people these things, because for the longest it has been not normalized to even ask questions like these. So I love that. And I love that she's doing that. And I applaud her for that. This is not directed at her. This is directed at large. Okay. And I think what's missing from that post and what might be missing from the conversation is the understanding that everyone is different, neurodivergent or not. And we should not have to advocate for our individual needs. Now, will you have to occasionally tell people, hey, this is my preference, because they don't know and they're not necessarily mind readers? Yes, occasionally you'll have to tell people, hey, I really don't do after hours stuff. Like, some people might really have personal boundaries around like drinking with coworkers or drinking, period. I think they forget that a lot too. I think they forget, this is just me deviating real quick. I think they forget that a lot of people actually have struggles with alcohol. So the consistent happy hours where the wine and the beer and whatever is flowing might seem fun to you and a great way to bond. And maybe for you it is, but there might be people who have like silent struggles with alcohol that they don't want to tell anyone about. They're just kind of working through it. But if they don't go to this after hours event and have a beer, then people will think something's wrong with them. Or in the case with women, if a woman is not drinking, one of the first questions she gets asked is, "Are you pregnant?" So, she can't just either not want to drink or be watching her calories or whatever. If she's not drinking, well, she must be pregnant. So that's fun. But my point is, people might have different reasons for different things. They shouldn't have to advocate for those things. They should only have to just tell you. And we really, as people, should be accepting and respecting of people's different preferences. You know what I'm saying? See, chat says, I have boundaries with getting intoxicated with people I don't feel close to. Exactly. Exactly. You know, um, we shouldn't have to like beg for the basics. I did a video on this channel a couple years ago called Narcissists Battle You Over the Basics, or Narcissists Battle You for the Basics, something like that. And that was more so talking about like the hierarchy of needs that they'll fight you over basic human needs. And then I guess in a way it does match what we're talking about here tonight. A lot of these are just basic human needs. They shouldn't be like singled out as revolutionary. That's what's scaring me, that this is considered revolutionary and it shouldn't be. And if it is, that means we are drifting further and further away from being human beings. You see what I mean? Like, oh man, I have so much to say about this. I'm so passionate about this. I feel like it's what my whole channel is about. It's like, why are we we should be having far more complex conversations by now. Not you and I and me and my audience in this channel. I mean, society at large. Society at large should be having far more complex conversations by now, not arguing over whether or not someone wants to turn their camera on, and needing a diagnosis for it to be okay. Like that's, mm, we're focused on the wrong thing. We're worried about the wrong thing. Okay. We're worried about the wrong thing. And that's why we can't progress. It's just so weird. Like, I feel like this should be a college course. I don't know what the title of it would be, but the idea would be it would be for juniors and seniors who are getting ready to graduate and go out into the workforce. And, everyone tells them the standard stuff: dress for success, network, show up on time, give it your all, always be open to learning new things, all that stuff. And it's all well and good and fine. Someone needs to sit these kids down and say, as it stands right now, you're going to spend a lot of your time enduring. And let's define enduring, and let's talk about the different things you will be enduring in the workplace. Your ability to endure will assure your career success long term. Your ability to tolerate truly annoying circumstances over time will be the key to your success, because that's really what it's about. I know the common understanding right now is that people quit bosses, they don't quit companies. And while that is true, people also quit circumstances, honey. They tired of smelling the girl's perfume who sits right next to them, or the guy's BO and funk. I know people who smell their coworkers' feet all day, and not because their feet are out of their shoes, their feet are in their shoes and they can still smell them. Not having to get pepper sprayed when you walk down the hallway from somebody's lunch, or smell some fish or some shrimp or something. Not having to be freezing cold all day. And some people are hot all day. Like, isn't it UPS who doesn't have air conditioners in the trucks? Is it UPS? One of the delivery services doesn't have air conditioners in their trucks. And the people in the union, I think, have been trying to fight for that for many, many years. And I don't know that they've been successful, or maybe they were recently successful. I don't know why it's on my mind as something recent, like a recent win. They finally got, they're going to get AC installed in the truck. Like, wow, You see what I'm saying? People quit circumstances. People get tired. So that would be the whole premise of that college course. Like, I know you think you're smart. I know you have your degree and you think you are hot shit right now. But can you stand the rain? Can you bear the pain of having your nose assaulted, your eyes, your ears, your physical body, annoying people, the gaslighting and the different psychological games that you'll have to endure at work? Can you? Because that's what it's really going to take. Your degree is great and very cute. Can you tolerate long term being in these environments? And they're not all this bad, thank God. But a lot of them have some commonalities. And I think the reason they have these commonalities is because these employers are basically recycling employees within the ecosystem, meaning this girl works over at this company for 4 years. She resigns. She starts at a new company. She's going to bring a lot of her old habits with her unless they don't tolerate that mess. Then she'll stay at that company for 2.5 years, resign, go on to another company. Now she's bringing the baggage of two companies with her to the new company. And before you know it, they all start to look the same. They all start to look the same, sound the same, and do the same things. I recently found out one of our senior leaders is on some board of directors for some other major companies in the area. And I thought to myself, oh, that's where he's getting all these bright ideas from some other people who don't get it at these other major companies, then bringing that mess back to us. We didn't ask for that. So, what I'm trying to say is because there is no divergence in the mentality of the people, eventually it all starts to look and sound the same. That's why so much of this content related to this topic is relatable, because a lot of us are going through the exact same thing in different companies. And you have to ask yourself, how in the world does that happen? How in the world did that happen? How did that happen? Like where are the companies who are radical and willing to try things that shouldn't even be considered radical? You know what I mean? I know a radical idea that has taken hold in recent years is are companies who call themselves remote first. So you'll often see that in the job description when, like, say you're looking for a new job, they'll say, we are a remote first company. That's radical, and it shouldn't be. It's 2024. It should not be radical to consider yourself a remote first company, meaning they either don't have offices or they don't require you to come into one if you don't want to. That's what remote first means, meaning we put remote work first over all other types of work. And then their companies are heavily reliant on things like email, instant messenger, Zoom calls, video calls. Now, they're probably remote first and camera first, but we're not going to get into that. We're going to take our wins where we can get them. They're putting remote work first. Hopefully, they're also putting camera off and on, optional first. Now you're revolutionary. Now you're radical. Now you're recognizing what's really important, which is the work that we're doing. Not you staring at my face, you freaking weirdo. Okay? Like, don't get me started on that. There is a video on this channel called Zoom Fatigue is Really Creepy Weirdo Fatigue. And it is. Okay? It absolutely is. And I've already gone into why. But I feel like I need to make a part two because I'm recently passionate about it again. But like, nobody wants to be stared at, especially when they're not the one talking. That's weird. Because that's not what you do in real life. In real life, when you're in a group of people and one person is talking, generally everyone is looking at the person speaking. Everyone is not looking at each other while someone else is talking. It's very weird. It's weird. Don't get me started, y'all. Don't get me started. Don't get me started. But there's a business idea for those of you who are makeup artists and you feel like you'd be able to travel within your city very well. You could put out a little company where people book you to come do their makeup before a Zoom call. And I imagine you would get booked up very fast, but you're not doing like what we say, or what we call a full beat. You're not doing a full beat. You're doing a beat that shows up very well on camera, but not necessarily something you would do necessarily if they were like going out or like for their birthday or celebrating something. It's just a nice camera ready beat, 30 minutes tops. Open your business. Customers can book you through an app or online or whatever. And basically, like if they have an 8 a.m. phone call, you would show up at their house around 7 or 7:30, do their makeup, boom, done. Give yourself some buffer time to get to your next appointment. Maybe their phone call is at 9:30 or 10. Get there, boom, do their makeup real quick so they look good on camera, knock it out, boom. You can have at least 5 or 6 clients in a day, I would estimate. Look into it. If I was a licensed makeup artist, I would look into that. I would look into that. But anyway, that pretty much summarizes my thoughts. And I want to leave you all with a deeper thought to kind of meditate on as you go throughout your week, your work week this week. Who decided what is normal? So, if all the questions that we just looked at from that post are questions that you should ask a neurodivergent employee or to promote neuro inclusion, that means that these are abnormal things to ask, which is weird all by itself, but we just talked about that. But it leaves you with a deeper question, which is who decides what is normal? Who makes that decision? What is the scientific basis behind that? Have any studies been run? Or is this just the way that somebody feels? So I feel like a normal person wouldn't do this. So if you don't do this, then you're abnormal. Something to think about. Who actually decides what is normal? Who decided it was normal to smell all these different things throughout the day and not be bothered? Or to not want to go to a happy hour after work or something, not feel like it. Why is that considered abnormal and not quite normal? Just something that the human animal does. Sometimes it wants to be in groups, sometimes it doesn't. You know, who decided these things? And why are they considered, why is the opposite of these things considered normal and anything that deviates from that considered abnormal? That's what I want y'all to think about as you go throughout your week. Okay? But with that, it was great seeing you all again. I will read through the comments once the show uploads. They may not upload for about 24 hours. It all depends. But once they upload, I will certainly rewatch the show and kind of read your comments as they were coming in. But I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it made sense. And I hope that as opposed to promoting neuro inclusivity, which is important, that we can promote simple inclusivity, which captures everyone, including neurodivergent people. Just leave people alone, honey. Learn how to leave people alone. I feel like I've always been like this and it's always been ingrained in me. I don't know if it's a cultural thing, if it's just a common sense thing, but the general takeaway is learn how to leave people alone. Leave them alone. Stop trying to force your preferences on them. And then when they don't align with your preferences, now they're abnormal and weird and need a diagnosis in order for you to honor it. Nah, let's not do that. So with that, I hope you all enjoy your week. I hope you enjoy the rest of your Sunday evening. And we should be talking again very, 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 very soon. Okay. I appreciate every single one of you. And I hope you have a good night. Bye.